Shabbat shalom, everyone. I want to share with you an amazing insight that I learned from the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who, in commenting on this week's parashah and Parashat Bo, made an observation about a very specific idea that Moshe brings up at this moment, right when Israel is actually leaving Egypt. So at this moment, on the night when they were about to leave, we read all the details about what they're supposed to do, about what Bnei Israel are supposed to do that night. And then we read the following verse about how they're supposed to remember that night for years to come. The Torah says the following: "You shall observe this as an institution for all time, for you and your descendants. And when you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he has promised, you shall observe this rite. And when your children ask you, 'What do you mean by this rite? Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem?' You shall say, 'It is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, because he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, but saved our houses.'" What Rabbi Sacks points out is that it is amazing that when Moses is giving instructions about how to remember this night, when he is telling people what to do, how to mark it, he talks about children, he talks about education, and he talks about the distant future, because he knew that what kept civilizations alive was not monuments, and it was not incredible buildings or structures. It was education and teachers and schools and a story to bind us all together. It is incredible how right Moses was all those centuries ago, and how much we still hold on to that idea that at the heart of the Jewish people is a school and a book and a student, whether it's a child or an adult. That insight was very much on my mind this week as I thought about the loss that the Jewish people suffered, a loss that those of us outside of the young Judea world might not have heard about. Just over a week ago, the loss of a great teacher and a great leader. And I want to share with you a couple of thoughts about this person, Mel Reesfield. Mel Reesfield was just about the biggest legend that Young Judea, the Zionist youth movement, ever produced. Young Judea has had more than its fair share of great educators and great leaders, but nobody measured up to Mel. Coming out of the Bronx, Mel happened upon Young Judea after he heard Menachem Begin speak and decided that Zionism was something he had to commit his life to. And Mel spent the next 50 years devoting his life to Young Judea, to Jewish education, leading Hebrew schools in New Jersey, and every summer finding himself at Camp Tel Yehuda, Young Judea's leadership high school camp, leading, being a Merakez, a unit head during the year, leading Young Judea groups. The last one, the one that I used to go to in Fort Lee. Mel was a person who somehow could relate to children of all ages, but especially teenagers, no matter how old he was. He was incredibly strong, was a bit vicious on the basketball court, as I can tell you from the bruises that I got during our games together, and loved people, Zionism, Israel, Jewish history, the Hebrew language, and loved all of us because we all wanted to be connected to him. We all wanted to be connected to the state of Israel. It is hard to imagine how many leaders Mel helped create, how many teachers and social workers, how many people who made Aliyah because of something that Mel said, because of something that Mel taught. His legacy lives on. After he retired from Tel Yehuda, from working in New Jersey, he finally made Aliyah in the late 1980s and taught again for Young Judea and was a tour guide for many, many more years. His legacy will live on. And he can be, for all of us, a living embodiment of what Moshe meant all those centuries ago. In order for a society to survive, in order for people to remember a story, you need a teacher, you need a student, you need a moment in time. Mel found those moments for all of us, and I can remember fondly many times together. And I hope that all of us can find a teacher like that, or perhaps we can be a teacher like that for someone else. Because Moshe was right all of those centuries ago. When our children ask, Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem, what does this mean to you? We need to have an answer. We need to have an answer that inspires, that describes, and that asks further questions, so that education is not just something that is rote knowledge passed from one to another, but it is learning that is done together as a community. Shabbat shalom.